What is up, everybody? I'm your host, Jake with Pilgrimage Films. This week's video is in response to a YouTube comment and one of the best contributors in the pilgrimage community, Mr. Rowe, also known as the Comment King. Well, that might also be Brian. They both do it a lot. Mr. Rowe wrote, not just a Christian topic, but one thing I'm interested to see is about prayer, role, ritual, and whatever else within Taiwanese folk religion. That's a great question. How do we understand prayer, role, and ritual with Taiwanese folk religion? So did you know that many activities actually can fall under the label of prayer? So that's kind of weird for us, but prayer isn't just talking to God. We define it often as Westerners as simply talking to God, but prayer can be so much more for other religions and other cultures. For those who don't dabble in monotheism, prayer is defined as an invocation or act that seeks to activate a rapport with an object of worship through deliberate communication. That's a little bit wordy. We pulled straight from El Wikipedia, the Spanish dictionary. But basically, it's intentional ways that people build a relationship with a god or spirit through communication. The broad definition of prayer means that many things can fall into the category of praying, from burning incense at the temple to giving gifts to meditation to just really shouting out to a god or a deity. So in the context of Taiwanese folk religion, many forms of spiritual communication fall into the category of divination. So divination is simply seeking knowledge through supernatural means, like in Harry Potter and the Tea Leaves of Doom with Professor Trelawney, and they're like, there's stuff in there, and she's got the goggles, the glasses.
Look, the cup. You're gonna suffer, but you're gonna be happy about it.
We covered one form of divination in our video, How to Get Answers, where we delved into spirit blocks. And these are little wooden items that are used to directly communicate between a spirit and a worshiper. And you should totally check that out. So Stein & Stein, also known as Stein Squared, shared an interesting observation in the book, The Anthropology of Religion, Magic, and Witchcraft. So then our homie, David Eastwood, he took this information and he made a chart because he's actually incredible at charts. If there's one thing you learn from his book, it's like, this is the guy I want on the chart team when we're going into chart season, yay charts. Divination can be classified as inspirational or non-inspirational. Inspiration would involve a spiritual experience between the diviner, such as seeing a spirit or even demonic possession. It's not like a Disney film type of inspiration.
No one knows how far it goes.
Non-inspirational divination involves interpreting or understanding natural events, features, and maybe magical objects. So these interactions can also be deliberate or fortuitous, a really hard word to say, which means happening by chance rather than by intention. So in deliberate actions, a diviner would make a conscious effort, such as using a Ouija board or contacting a medium. But fortuitous divination would include a visit from Ghost Dad, or interpreting omens that you can't control. It's this idea of the spiritual life kind of just showing up. So this plays itself out often in how Taiwanese folk religion interacts with the spirit world. Incense, chanting, sacrifice, and spirit blocks could all technically be considered prayers under that old wiki definition we gave. They're all forms of building rapport with an object of worship through deliberate communication. But this also generally falls into the broader definition of prayer rather than a simplistic idea of prayer. Prayer in Taiwanese folk religion can be verbal or internal, or in the case of spirit blocks, where they're throwing them up like dice, they're actually attempting to have a conversation with a spirit or God and receiving communication back through some sort of an object. Verbal prayer is usually transactional, and it's not that relational in Taiwanese folk religion compared to what we'd say like Christian type of prayer styles. Like during Matsu, when they introduce themselves to Matsu, they share a Matsu story and they make requests. But in general, the gods don't really have this deep personal relationship with the worshipers. And worshipers often introduce themselves as they petition to be like, hey, it's me. I don't know if you know who I am. It's still building some sort of relationship, but it's more akin to a business partner or an employee or a citizen than it would be a friend.
Instead of going straight to business, Michael focuses on establishing a personal relation first.
Awesome Blossom.
What?
I think we should share an Awesome Blossom. What do you say? They are awesome.
He lightens the mood with jokes and really takes the time to get to know his potential client. It is only after laying a solid foundation that he engages in business and makes the sale.
And that's because the gods aren't really all-knowing or all-powerful. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the hierarchy system that they have. There's a level of like certain gods are over certain things. But this is very different from what's found in Christianity. Prayer in Christianity doesn't align with the broad definition that we see throughout other religions. In fact, it's supposed to be one of the least religious and most relational parts of Christianity. And when I say that, I mean just one of the least ritualistic. While divination is used by almost all cultures worldwide, early on in Christianity, it was actually forbidden as a practice for the people of God. Deuteronomy 18:10 connects divination with child sacrifice, witchcraft, talking to the dead, and expressly forbids interpreting signs and omens as divine guidance. So unfortunately, Miss Cleo could not do what she does in Christianity.
Let's take a look. The Miss Cleo DNA test. I'm solely searching for the father of your baby.
Oddly enough, though, it doesn't say it's because those practices don't work. Rather, it's because God doesn't allow his people to work that way, and instead he has a prophetic office in Deuteronomy 18:15 where he communicates to his people. But this office came with strict standards, like if you didn't say the right thing or you're wrong, you'd get stoned to death. So it would weed out a lot of the fakes.
The land is sacred in our religion because it's the place where all human souls will be transmuted when Zorp, the lizard god, passes through Jupiter's sphincter.
Hail Zorp.
Hail Zorp!
So the ban on divination removes many forms of communication that other religions would use to talk between God and men. Instead, Christianity speaks of a very personal God and uses many examples to show us how prayer works throughout the scriptures. So prayer in Christianity is a direct connection between God and the believer.
I got a friend request from God. What?
So Christianity shows a God who is all-knowing, all-powerful. He hears every thought of mankind. So the biblical encounters that they had with him were often deadly, and they were terrifying. Due to being sinners, we just tended to, kind of die. Prophets in the temple came along, and they gave fairly limited direct access to God, but through Jesus, it was made possible that people could have a personal relationship with God. So Hebrews 12:18-24 talks about the old way we had access to God, where God would dwell on a mountain sometimes, and there'd be fire and smoke and these incredible sounds, and if an animal would touch the mountain or a sinful person, they could just die. And that's contrasted with Jesus, who gives us a new covenant and a pathway to God. He gives us access through his sacrifice on the cross. He breaks down the barrier between God and man, so we have this approachable, loving relationship with God.
Jesus is a friend of mine. Jesus is my friend.
And it's a personal relationship. So in Matthew 6:5-8, Jesus tells us that God already knows our needs. We shouldn't pray to impress people.
A man and a woman.
And that using a bunch of empty or repetitive words isn't really how we should pray. What Jesus is getting at is just how non-ritualistic Christian prayer is. It's not about chanting, saying magic words, throwing blocks, or burning things. And that makes sense. You wouldn't beg and repeat yourself with friends, and you wouldn't parade out well-written conversations in front of others with your friends to just impress people like, yes, I want to talk about the glory of the friend Ben. Instead, you would talk like a normal person. So a conversation with God is not a conversation with a government official or between an employee and a boss. It's more like between a child and their father.
Father God, we thank you.
The other thing is the children of God need no introduction to him. He hears the thoughts and the heart. We don't need to worry about how well spoken we are or pleasing God with our words or introducing ourselves because we're new. God knows who we are. That's one of the beautiful things about Christian prayer, is it's just not ritualistic. Thank you for joining us with Pilgrimage Films. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, ring that bell, and share this with your friends so we can keep growing. And a special thanks to Mr. Rowe for the video suggestion. We covered this broad idea of prayer, role, and ritual in Taiwanese folk religion today, but in the future we're going to dive deeper in those nitty-gritty details, like what's a chant actually look like, for all people who are like, I want to know what a chant looks like. But if you're watching this and you'd want to see something covered with Pilgrimage Films, let us know in the comments below. We're really serious. You give us an idea, we'll go with it. We actually have a list, basically from Andrew Rowe. So if you want to actually share some ideas, we will, and we'd love to make some content that appeals to what our audience wants as well. So until next time, see ya. And then there's also the prayer form of praying to God while being really emotional through a worship song while giving a sermon that I see a lot of times where it's like, the problem today is that we just don't have enough loveliness. And if we had more love loveliness, then all the problems would go away in the church. And I know that I struggle with love loveliness. When I got up this morning, the first thing I thought about was not love loveliness. And so if we could just do love loveliness more and maybe some more intangible concepts that aren't really defined well, then everything would be right with the world.